Welcome back to the space of cinematic nostalgia. Today we travel back in time to 1959 when the classic Western Rio Bravo officially premiered. Not only did it create a box office fever, but Howard Hawks' masterpiece also etched into the minds of viewers a story of courage, camaraderie, and redemption amidst a border town fraught with danger. Rio Bravo was not merely a shoot-'em-up horse opera. It was an epic hymn about imperfect people finding a way to stand up for justice. But behind those classic characters, from the brave sheriff to the drunken deputy finding his dignity, were actors with real-life fates full of unexpected turns. More than 60 years have passed, and cruel time has carved different marks onto their lives. Some became immortal monuments, some sank into extreme loneliness, and others had to stop their journey in tragic agony. Let us quiet our hearts to look back at the tumultuous journey of the actors who created the soul of Rio Bravo. Dean Martin as Dude. In Rio Bravo, the character of Dude, or Borrachon the Drunk, was one of the most haunting and profound roles of Dean Martin's career. At the age of 42, Dean completely shed the suave, romantic persona usually seen in a Rat Pack member to embody a deputy destroyed by alcohol, trembling and desperately fighting to regain his dignity. His acting was so authentic that one could see the pain of a wounded soul hidden behind those tired eyes, proving that he was not just a singer with a smooth voice. However, Dean Martin's real life was even more dramatic and sorrowful than the movie. Born into an Italian immigrant family, he went through every job, from bootlegging to boxing before touching Hollywood glory. Though famous for his charm and humor behind closed doors, Dean always had to fight his own demons. 3 marriages collapsed under the weight of fame and distance. But the biggest shock, the fatal blow that defeated the seemingly carefree man, occurred in 1987. His beloved son, Dean Paul, died in a jet crash. From that moment on, a part of Dean Martin died. He gradually withdrew from the world, becoming quiet and broken. In his final years, people often saw Dean as a ghost of his former self. He would often sit alone at restaurants in Beverly Hills, wearing his familiar suit, eating and drinking in absolute silence. He refused small talk, living as a recluse with the grief of losing his child that could never be soothed. The image of Dude finding salvation on film seemed to contrast completely with Dean's resignation in real life. The journey of the King of Cool closed. On Christmas Day, 1995, Dean Martin passed away at home due to acute respiratory failure from emphysema at the age of 78. He departed in silence, leaving behind a massive fortune but also a vast emptiness in the hearts of fans regarding a lonely star. John Wayne as Sheriff John T. Chance. Taking on the role of Sheriff John T. Chance at the age of 51, John Wayne continued to affirm his position as the icon of American masculinity. Chance was a model hero, upright, steadfast, and full of pride. He did not fight alone, but gathered the weak to stand against evil, demonstrating leadership that was authoritative, yet humane. For John Wayne, this role was not just a gun-toting sheriff, but the embodiment of loyalty and honor, values he always pursued on the silver screen. However, the man behind that badge was much more complex and thorny. John Wayne's life was a series of endless controversies, from tumultuous marriages and heavy addiction to alcohol and cigarettes to extreme political views. He was a fierce anti-communist, supported the Hollywood blacklist, and made shocking statements about race that chipped away at his American cowboy image in the eyes of many. Nevertheless, he remained the Marlboro Man of cinema, a towering monument that, whether loved or hated the world, still had to look up to. His illustrious career of over 170 films came at the cost of his own health. Wayne fought like a true warrior, not only on set but also against the vicious cancer that was the consequence of smoking 5 packs a day for decades. That battle was as grueling and painful as any gunfight he ever participated in. On June 11, 1979, the icon of the Wild West took his last breath in Los Angeles at the age of 72 after cancer metastasized to his stomach. His grave remained unmarked without a headstone for 20 years until the words "Feo fuerte y formal," ugly, strong, and dignified, were carved. a concise yet most complete summary of the life of a controversial legend. Ricky Nelson as Colorado Ryan. When participating in Rio Bravo, Ricky Nelson was only 19 years old, a teen idol with handsome looks and a sweet voice. The role of the young, agile, and loyal gunslinger Colorado. Ryan helped Ricky escape the boy next door label to prove his serious acting ability. Colorado on film was a young man full of promise, dangerous but reliable, representing the talented next generation of the Wild West. But Ricky Nelson's real life was a tragedy of fame coming too soon. Born into a prestigious Hollywood family, Ricky was pushed into the spotlight when he was just a child. His music career once exploded, rivaling even Elvis Presley, but then the British invasion and the changing trends of the 60s turned him into a has-been while he was still very young. Ricky's personal life slid into bitter divorce battles, mounting debt, and a dependence on drugs to soothe his loneliness. In his final years, Ricky Nelson struggled in desperation to reclaim his old glory. He toured small towns, performing on empty stages, trying to hold onto the applause of the past. But fate had arranged a cruel ending for the one-time Prince of Rock Roll on December 31st, 1985, on a flight to Dallas for a New Year's Eve performance. His plane caught fire and crashed in Texas. Ricky Nelson, along with his fiancée and band, perished in the terrible fire. He departed at just 45 years old, leaving behind an unfinished career and a haunting reminder of the price of fame for child stars. Ward Bond as Pat Wheeler. In Rio Bravo, Ward Bond played Pat Wheeler, the loyal old friend of Sheriff Chance. Although his screen time was not extensive, the presence of Pat Wheeler, with his rugged appearance and warm smile, created a solid emotional anchor in the film. The sudden death of this character on screen shocked the audience, and ironically it served as a chilling omen for Ward Bond's own fate in real life. Just a short time later, behind that rough and strong exterior, Ward Bond lived a life full of physical pain and solitude. A car accident in 1939 left permanent damage to his leg, causing him to constantly endure dull pain throughout his career of over 200 films. He was a man of his work, dedicating himself entirely to acting. But lacking a complete family home, Bond never married, had no children, and often got into fierce conflicts with colleagues due to his hot temper and conservative political views. Loneliness seemed to be his most loyal companion. The connection between his role and his life is worth pondering on film. He died due to the cowardice of the enemy, while in real life he fell because his own heart was overworked. While at the peak of fame with the TV series Wagon Train, Ward Bond's journey stopped abruptly. On November 5th, 1960, he suffered a massive heart attack and passed away at a hotel in Dallas at the age of 57. His close friend John Wayne saw him off on his final journey, closing the life of a great but solitary character actor. Walter Brennan as Stumpy. No one can forget Stumpy, the old limping jailer with the distinctive raspy voice in Rio Bravo. At 64, Walter Brennan turned this character into the soul of the film, a grumpy old man who was absolutely loyal and extraordinarily brave. Stumpy brought laughter and moving tears, becoming one of the defining roles of this actor, who won 3 Oscars. Brennan's talent was undeniable. He could embody every type of role excellently. However, the real Walter Brennan was a contrasting picture full of controversy. Behind the humor on screen was a man who was extremely conservative and suspicious. He carried extreme political ideologies, strongly supporting anti-communist movements, and even holding views against the civil rights movement, which makes many people today wary. Brennan lived in anxiety about the changes in America, to the point that he stockpiled weapons in a bunker at his home for fear of riots. Even so, one cannot deny his persistence with his craft and his faithfulness in a marriage that lasted more than 50 years, a rarity in Hollywood. He worked hard, despite the ailments of old age. But eventually, his body had to surrender to time and his smoking habit. On September 21st, 1974, Walter Brennan passed away in California at the age of 80 due to complications from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. He departed, leaving behind a massive cinematic legacy and a large fortune, but also leaving open questions about the boundary between artistic talent and the personal views of a human being. Pedro González as Carlos Robante. In Rio Bravo, Carlos Robante, the kind, talkative, and overly enthusiastic hotel owner, was an endless source of joy for the audience. Pedro González, then 34 years old, used his innate charm and loquacious acting style to bring a supporting role to life. Carlos was not just a comic character, but also the embodiment of loyalty and humanity in the harsh frontier. Pedro's smile on film shone like the sun, hiding the hardships of a fate rising from the bottom of society. Pedro's life was a fairy tale of resilience. Born into poverty and illiterate, he had to sing on the streets with his family to make a living day by day, before luck smiled upon him through a TV show. However, Hollywood was as cruel to him as it was to Estelita. He was pigeonholed into roles of funny, silly Mexicans for decades. Yet, unlike many colleagues, Pedro never let bitterness invade his soul. He accepted reality with an incredible spirit of optimism, cherishing every opportunity to appear before the camera, no matter how small the role. He was a man of sentimental value, faithful to his only wife throughout his life, and always maintained faith in living. Pedro was not rich in money, but he was rich in the love of the audience. He proved that one does not need to be the lead role to shine. The journey of that lovable clown closed peacefully on February 6, 2006. Pedro González passed away at home due to old age at 80. He left an immortal smile on the screen and a profound lesson about optimism, overcoming adversity to live a full and meaningful life. Estelita Rodríguez as Consuela Robante. Amidst the atmosphere reeking of gunpowder and the grit of Western men, Estelita Rodríguez appeared like a vibrant flower with the role of Consuela Robante. At age 30, the Cuban-born actress blew a fresh breeze into the film with her charm, radiant smile, and fiery personality. Consuela was not just the hotel owner's wife, but also a factor bringing humor and warmth, soothing the tension of the film's flow. It was a rare moment of brilliance in Estelita's career, promising an open future. However, the real life of this Cuban rose was a sad ballad full of tragic low notes. The Hollywood of the 50s was not a paradise for Latino actors. Estelita was trapped in stereotypical roles, always having to play hot, foolish, or flirtatious women, never given the chance to show inner depth. Dead in career, along with 4 broken marriages, eroded her soul. Close friends recounted that behind the bright smile on screen was a depressed woman who felt used and squeezed dry by the entertainment industry, then abandoned. The peak of tragedy came too soon and too suddenly. On March 12, 1966, just one day before her 38th birthday, Estelita Rodríguez was found dead at her home in California. The cause of death was never clearly announced, leaving behind a series of rumors about suicide or a drug overdose. In despair, her departure left a painful void and a meager estate of less than $500,000. Estelita was like a shooting star, flashing brilliantly in Rio Bravo, only to fade quickly into the darkness of oblivion and extreme loneliness. John Russell, as Nathan Burdett. If Joe Burdett was the outbreak of fire, his brother Nathan Burdett, played by John Russell, was the cold and terrifying iceberg at age 38 with superior height and eyes sharp as a razor. John Russell successfully portrayed the image of a powerful tycoon, a manipulator of everything from the shadows. Without needing to scream, just with silence and a gaze full of authority, Nathan Burdett became one of the most impressive villains of the Western genre, a worthy counterweight to John Wayne. In real life, John Russell was also a tough and proud man, true to the nature of a former Marine who had experienced the fire of war. But that military past left invisible emotional wounds, making him withdrawn and sometimes in conflict with film producers. He lived with soaring self-esteem to an extreme point. When he contracted chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, due to years of smoking, he resolutely refused treatments he considered weak, accepting, letting the disease ravage his body rather than losing his pride. There is a strange similarity between Nathan Burdett and John Russell. Both were powerful men, gradually sinking into the darkness because of their own stubbornness. In his final years, the breathing of the once illustrious villain became labored. He could barely speak without gasping. He isolated, himself distancing from old friends and colleagues. John Russell's journey ended on January 19th, 1991, when he passed away from emphysema at the age of 70. He departed quietly, not noisily like his roles, leaving behind a respectable cinematic legacy, but also a warning about the devastation of habits and an oversized ego. Harry Carey Jr. as Harold. Harry Carey Jr. came to Rio Bravo in the role of Harold, a gentle townsman, a small but symbolic role. As the son of a cinema legend and a protege of director John Ford, Harry Carey Jr. seemed born to belong to the Wild West. His appearance in the film was like a hyphen between the old generation and the new, carrying the quiet, reliable demeanor of true cowboys. He didn't need to act much, just by standing there the audience saw a whole sky of memories of the Western genre rushing back. But the tragedy of Harry Carey Jr. did not lie in personal upheavals, but in the cruelty of time toward an era. He lived long enough to witness the collapse of the Western genre he worshipped. From a sought-after actor, he was gradually pushed to the margins, becoming a lonely survivor amidst the graves of his friends. John Wayne died. John Ford died, his brothers in arms passed away one by one, leaving him alone in a modern and strange Hollywood. He wrote memoirs not to show off, but to hold on to memories that were fading like a loyal gatekeeper for a dead era. His private life was peaceful with his wife Marilyn Fix for 68 years, but the sadness of oblivion was always present in those old eyes. He was not wealthy. His assets were a mere $1 million after a lifetime of dedication, but he was the last living historical witness. On December 27, 2012, Harry Carey Jr. took his last breath in Santa Barbara at the age of 91. His departure was not just the death of an actor, but the official full stop for the golden era of cowboys on the silver screen, completely closing the door on the Wild West in our memories. Claude Akins as Joe Burdett. If Rio Bravo needed a spark to ignite the war, Claude Akins was the perfect detonator with the role of Joe Burdett. At age 33, Claude brought to the screen an aggressive, drunken, and cold-blooded criminal, one who casually killed a man right in a saloon, starting the days of tension at the town jail. With a large physique and angular face, Joe Burdett appeared as a constant threat, a typical villain who made the audience both hate and fear him due to his visceral brutality. Ironically, the man who specialized in playing villains was in real life a surprisingly model gentleman. Claude Akins possessed a sharp intellect and a kind heart, but his rugged appearance caused Hollywood to pigeonhole him into villainous roles or rude characters throughout his career. He once bitterly joked, "I am the highest-paid unknown in Hollywood," referring to his appearance in hundreds of films, while rarely being recognized by name like a true star. Nevertheless, he never let the false aura blind him. Claude chose a quiet life, avoiding scandals, and maintaining a happy marriage of 42 years with his wife Teresa, a rare thing amidst the glamorous temptations. The contrast between the role and his life is proof of his superior acting talent. While Joe Burdett destroyed the happiness of others, Claude Akins spent his life nurturing his home and living kindly. But then even that healthy living man could not avoid the laws of life and death. In his final years, he silently fought a vicious cancer without uttering a word of complaint. Claude Akins passed away on January 27, 1994, at his home at the age of 67. He departed in the arms of his loved ones, was buried at the prestigious Forest Lawn Cemetery, leaving behind a massive legacy of roles and a lesson in the humility of a villain with a saintly heart.